The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. Today, thank you, RFK Jr. rallies across the nation. We have David Dorn and Tia Severino, two amazing grassroots activists, to talk about their rallies. They're happening in over a dozen cities, heading to 24. After that, we have the amazing, legendary Meryl Nass talking about chemtrails exposed with Pete Kirby. We have rallies happening saying thank you to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. all across the nation. Let's throw up some of these flyers we have. We have New York City. We have Atlanta. Talk to Tia about Atlanta. We have Florida. There's actually going to be two locations in Florida. Chicago. Going to be talking to David about that. New Jersey. We have Oregon. And we have a bunch more. We're going to have a link in the show notes. Find a rally near you. Check out all the rallies we got so far. In Arizona, we have 3 locations for Thank You RFK rallies. In California, we currently have 2 locations that are happening. We're waiting to see if a couple more come in. Boulder, Colorado, Connecticut in Madison. In Florida, there are 2 locations already announced. In Georgia, we have 2 locations, including CDC in Atlanta, Chicago, Illinois. In Michigan, there's a ticketed event you could buy a ticket to and participate in the Thank You RFK rally. 2 in Nebraska. We have 2 or 3, 2 happening in New Jersey, and 4 events happening all throughout New York. North Dakota also has a ticketed event doing Thank You RFK, and Oregon has an event at an overpass as well too. Keep checking this link. It'll be the first link in the show notes for you to find a rally happening in your area or near your area. We also should have it up in CHD childrenshealthdefense.org. On the main page, we have a carousel of things you could flip through. It should be there soon as well too. And if you have an event, email us, send it to us, send it to goodmorning@chd.tv. If you have an event you want to get up on here, goodmorning@chd.tv. You can have 5 people, you can have 500 people. Just hold up a sign, write your own sign. Say, thank you, RFK Jr. He has the firing squad aimed at him, so we need to come out and be his defense, his peaceful defense. There's a lot of energy around this one, so we hope you could join in. Before I bring in Tia and David, we're just going to go through some of the news. The big news: President Donald J. Trump steps in front of Bobby Kennedy to make a number of announcements. 1, he wants the MMR vaccine broken up into individual shots. 2, Hep B shot not before the age of 12 years old. 3, no more aluminum in vaccines. And the last 1 or 2 things they already did: no mercury, no thimerosal in vaccines, and break up the MMRV shot. That's the MMR shot with varicella, with the chickenpox shot in it. That was done at the last ACIP meeting. They showed some staggering data about what happened with seizures and other adverse events when this 4 combo shot was given at once. I just want to say a lot of people feel Trump and Bobby did not go far enough. I understand that, but you have to understand what just happened. Up until now, Trump has been using Bobby as cover. Bobby's been out front on these issues. That just got flipped. The president of the United States just came out and said, these are my priorities. Thank you so much, President Trump, for doing that, for your leadership, and for standing with Bobby Kennedy. We would have had none of this, literally zero, if anybody else besides Bobby Kennedy was in this space. So I'm personally very excited about it. Autism Roundtable happening from the MAHA Institute this Thursday, September 25th. at noon in Washington, D.C. At the Willard Hotel. Some amazing people speaking there. Brian Hooker, Tony Lyons, my good friend John Gilmore, founder of Autism Action Network, is going to be there. Definitely check that out. If you could get to the D.C. area, you definitely want to check this one out. The Thank You RFK Jr. rallies, I got to shout out again Tony Lyons. He invited me onto the MAHA action call where I was able to pitch Thank You RFK rallies. And there was a bunch of reporters on that call when we pitched it, and Politico picked it up. So Politico gave a straight news article on Thank You RFK Jr. rallies happening across the country. You heard me right. It was a straight news article. Let's read it. The MAHA movement is rallying behind its leader, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., after senators berated the health secretary in back-to-back hearings this month for firing the CDC's director and moving to revise vaccine guidance. Now those in Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again movement plan events in near a dozen cities from Florida to California on September 27th to thank him for sticking up for kids' health, they said during a call with supporters. The rest of that article, the link's in the show notes, excuse me, straight news. It's a straight news article. So we have moved the needle where Politico reports on us as news, right? Has that really happened before? I don't really think so. So some of these changes are small, but if you don't get the microscope out and take a look at it, you're going to miss them and you're not going to realize what has happened. Thank you to Tony Lyons and MAHA Action for helping to make that happen and helping to get the exposure here. Before we bring on Tia and David, I just have one other announcement. A lot of you know already. In Austin, Texas, November 7th through the 9th, Moment of Truth, CHD has our conference. Del Bigtree, Mary Holland, Andy Wakefield, Senator Rand Paul, Russell Brand, Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, Dr. Peter McCullough, and more special guests still not announced. The discount is about to end in 1 week. There is a discounted ticket price that is happening right now. Please get your tickets now because that price is going to end, I believe, September 30th. Is the last date. It's an amazing lineup of dozens and dozens of speakers, amazing panels. We're going to have the Vax, the Redux panel, Del Bigtree, Andy Wakefield, Polly Tommy, Brian Hooker on the same stage for the first time in nearly a decade. What a moment that's going to be as well, too. And so many other amazing panels that are going to be happening. Please reserve your tickets today. And with that, I want to bring on our activist, Tia Severino in Georgia, and David Dorn in New Jersey, in Illinois. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to Good Morning CHD.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, so Tia, I want to start with you because yours is not on September 27th. Yours in Georgia, in Atlanta, is on September 26th. Talk to people a little bit about what you're doing in Atlanta.
Well, as we all know, the CDC is in Atlanta, and it has been the location of many protest rallies, and we've showed up inside and outside the building there. And so it seemed fitting to do this rally at the CDC on a day when people who work at the CDC will actually be there. They're not there on the weekends, and we want to make sure that they know that we're present and that we're there supporting HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that we're there supporting the work that's being done to reform HHS and its subsidiary agencies like CDC. CDC, I would say, is the biggest, most corrupt institution out of the umbrellaed agencies under HHS. There's been a total takeover. It's been very corrupt there. We're so excited to see the changes, however incremental and small they may feel to people like myself and others who, personally, I can't wait for the day that they say vaccines are totally a choice. And you don't have to have them to engage in polite society. Actually, to be honest with you, I'd like to see them all done away with, and the people that have been pushing them get their comeuppance. But that's just me. And I'll be happy to get the pressure off of these parents where they feel like they don't have a choice. And that is really, I think, the biggest takeaway from what's been happening at the ACIP meetings and the big announcement yesterday was that take the pressure off.
I agree with you, Tia. Tia Severino's no stranger to the CDC campus. She's going to be leading a peaceful rally and demonstration of free speech. And as you said, Tia, I believe just to avoid any controversy, even though you legally could be on the sidewalk in front of CDC, you're not going to do that this time. You're going to be across the street so as to not cause any controversy, even though legally you could go right in front of the CDC. So again, this one's September 26th, the day before the majority of these rallies are happening at CDC headquarters. Tia, the whole point of this is to say thank you to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's under attack for doing things like reforming the most corrupt federal health agency as the CDC. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about why you personally, what you would say, what you have to say to Bobby Kennedy himself in terms of thanking him?
Well, as many may know, but maybe some people don't know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been in this fight for 2 decades now, and he is one of the loudest, and I guess I would say one of the most powerful voices on our side fighting for the health of our children. It really moved me to hear him say that he's gotten up every morning and prayed to God that he would be, to put him in a position where he would be able to end the chronic health crisis in our children. And so we love Bobby, and I personally want to say thank you, RFK Jr., for being the voice for us mothers, for being the one true champion for mothers, because we do know what happened to our kids, and we really have been long praying for a champion like Bobby to be in the position that he's in now, so that we can make these kind of changes, so that we can finally get to the bottom of what is causing this chronic health crisis in our people. This is a big deal. We are heading towards a cliff where if Stephanie Seneff's predictions are correct, the combination of other environmental toxins and vaccines, we're going to have 1 in every 2 children by 2032 on the autism spectrum. 80% of the boys, half of the kids. That means no standing army. That means, what are we going to do? This is a crisis, and we have got to correct the course. This is just the beginning. I am looking so forward to the future announcements, as this is just kind of ripping off the Band-Aid. Now we're going to get down to what's really behind this. And I think a lot of people already, like myself, already know that it is largely the vaccines. There are other environmental toxins, though. Let's get down to the bottom of it. And thank you so much for being willing to take on this beast that is the pharmaceutical industry, and being fearless, because it takes a fearless and bold and brave warrior to do the things that RFK Jr. is doing right now. So thank you.
Oh, that's so well said, Tia. To people in our community, it's no secret. A lot of people watching know that your son was profoundly impacted and vaccine injured and regressed into autism as well too. So I imagine this is extremely personal for you, and for the just hundreds of thousands, millions of moms out there who had to go through this because of big pharma corruption, actually had these injuries happen to their children.
Well, actually, Michael, I have to correct you. My son did not have a regression event. And I'm glad that you kind of brought it up, because I would like to tell Luke's story. Luke did not get the hepatitis B vaccine at birth. He got his hepatitis B vaccine when he was 2 months old. I had already heard the warnings about the MMR and the combination shots. And so I thought I was going to be cautious and responsible and do one dose at a time. And so when I heard ACIP make the recommendation to move the birth dose of hepatitis B to 1 month, I just shook my head. You know, in one way, it's good because that will take a lot of pressure off of moms who have just given birth, having to fight in the hospitals. It'll eliminate the problem of Child Protective Services being called for parents who refuse the birth dose of hepatitis B. But waiting until they're 1 month old or 2 months old is not good enough. I like what President Trump said about waiting until they're 12, but even at 12, I still think that's too young. 12 is puberty. There's a lot of things happening in a child's body at 12. I really don't think hepatitis B vaccine should be given to anyone that's not at high risk. But with my son, the other thing that I want to say, and this is, I do appreciate President Trump coming out and making such bold statements. However, for those who think that following that advice and doing one and just taking those vaccines and spreading them out is going to prevent autism, I have to tell you that that did not help my son. So if my son had gotten all the vaccines on the CDC schedule as they're recommended, I am so positive that he would be severely autistic or possibly another one of these SIDS babies, and I wouldn't even have him because he only got 4. They were all before he was 6 months old. I stopped when he was 6 months old, and he has autism. How is he? He's doing great. He's high functioning, but anyone that lives with someone with high functioning autism will tell you that this is it's not a gift, okay? My son struggles every day. He struggles every single day. And I do not wish this on anyone. And the worst part is that I don't know what my child would be like if he hadn't been touched by this. And I do have 2 children on the spectrum. So I have an older child that got all the 90s vaccines and who is also autism and is also high functioning. Yeah, not really. Okay. So just know that you may lessen the severity. Let's take a little line from their COVID BS, right? You'll lessen the severity of the autism, but you won't prevent it completely by getting the vaccines on a delayed or spaced out schedule. So hopefully we'll get deeper and more meaningful truths as we go along. It's got to be incremental, and I get that. And I'm so grateful that the moves are being made that are being made. But just from my experience, spacing them out, delaying them, doing one at a time, we still have autism. So.
Right. Where there is risk, there must be choice, and absolute choice, and 100% choice for the parent to do this. Tia, thank you for sharing your perspective and your experience. It's so important for our audience to hear that as they're having kids and we have new moms trying to make these decisions and figure out what's right for them. And I was also just thinking about, I believe it was 2 years ago, 23 years since Simpsonwood, when you helped to put on an event in Atlanta, shining a light on that, the Simpsonwood controversy around Hep B, and the Hep B shot being related to a almost 1,200% increase in autism diagnosis if you received it on day one of birth. And I just want to thank you for all the great things, all the amazing things that you've done in Georgia and beyond as well, too. Don't go anywhere, but I want to bring David into this conversation over in Illinois, over in Chicago. David, tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the 27th. The date of most of the rallies is when you guys will be rallying in Chicago.
So we've got it. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for all the work you do. And thanks, Tia, for your story. That was really inspiring to me. Yeah, we're gathering on the 27th, Saturday morning between 10 a.m. and noon, 330 North Wabash. That's actually the headquarters of the American Medical Association, which I think is symbolic. And it's at the Chicago River. So there's some tourists in Chicago in September. So people will be out and about. And, one of the things that we really have enjoyed being part of Children's Health Defense here in Illinois is giving people a chance to get together in person, and see others who share ideas that they resonate with. I think there's a lot of physicians in the medical community who recognize there's some real challenges with the vaccines, but they're afraid to say anything. They're afraid to acknowledge it. And I think that that's true across our society. So we want to basically be visible. We want to be friendly, engaging, and invite people to show their gratitude for the work that Mr. Secretary Kennedy, I want to call him Bobby, but I mean, while he's secretary, I want to honor that and be grateful for that. So while our present Health and Human Services Secretary is doing what he's doing, bringing transparency back to this completely broken agency, we want to have a chance to say thank you and show others that that's how we feel.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had missed that you guys are going to be in front of the AMA. That is just fantastic. That is definitely one of the beasts we need to be at. We're seeing across the country, blue states especially, creating these syndicates that are saying, no, we're not going to listen to the CDC. We're not going to listen to federal health agencies. We're going to listen to the AAP. We're going to listen to the AMA. We're going to listen to these private, basically big pharma captured private cartels as to what we should do to our kids. So that's fantastic that you are going to be at such a symbolic location. I hope all of Illinois and Chicago comes out. David, last time I saw you was at the DNC. We rallied there back in 2024 in a more political setting. I'll leave it at that for now. But David, why don't you just tell people, we're doing these thank you RFK rallies. He's under attack. We got his back. Tell people why you want to say thank you to Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the political work we do is not part of CHD at all, as me as a personal individual. So I just want to put that disclaimer out. Yeah, I mean, Bobby just inspires me in so many ways, and there's so many examples I can give. But bringing trust back to a completely corrupted agency and having the grace and the dignity to be clear in his convictions and withstand this screeching and these assaults from senators and who are taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, when what he's saying is we want to basically look at everything. We want to make the data transparent to the public. And why so many people have a hard time connecting conflicts of interest with decision making. I mean, throughout, so I really appreciate Bobby being transparent and being able to just say, hey, we want to make all this information available to the public. We want the public to make their decisions, and we want to look at everything. And for doing that, he's just taking this personal abuse, these ad hominem attacks, as opposed to debating and discussing what he actually is saying. And the fact that he's able to pursue that and stay that course, even at great personal cost, and the societal impact of being on the disinformation dozen at the top of the list and so forth, but still staying with what he believes is right, and making the decision to join with Donald Trump, even though they had some real differences ideologically, being able to say, this is what I want to do. I think this is the best vehicle for me to basically have an impact on children's health in this country, and I'm going to do that, even though it's not perfect and maybe not my first choice. But just his vision, his wisdom, his spiritual groundedness, his dignity, his just intelligence. I mean, I'm so grateful that he's putting his energy into this, and so grateful for what's possible as a future in our country and around the world.
Yeah, that was really so well said. And talking about putting differences aside and teaming up with President Trump. When it first happened, I was so worried we were getting duped. I was so worried that Trump just wanted the votes and it wasn't going to happen. I was wrong. I mean, you could see, and as I said earlier, when Trump stepped in front of Bobby at that press conference yesterday and said, here's what I as president want to see happen, he's now giving Bobby Kennedy cover and letting the entirety basically of the Republican apparatus know this isn't just what Bobby wants. This is what I want. This is what we want. This is what the American people deserve. And I think it's just truly remarkable that we are here, that we are in this moment now. David, thank you so much for your leadership. Thanks for helping to hold up a rally in Chicago. I had a great time when I was out there rallying with you guys and others in Chicago. I'm going to miss that because I'm going to be in New York City. We're going to be in front of the Pfizer headquarters here in New York City, making this all happen. David, Dorn, Tia Severino from Atlanta to Illinois to New York. We're all saying thank you to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you both so much for your activism. Oh, and make sure, get the photos, tag us on CHD, hashtag thank you RFK, and make sure we see all of it. We really want to make a big splash with it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thank you, RFK. Again, the link will be in the show notes where you can go to find a location. We have flyers as well, links to flyers that you can download and print out and hand out to educate people in your area. This is going to be a historic moment for the grassroots to come out and support our leader, who there's nobody else in the world who's positioned to take on this leadership responsibility quite like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he needs us to have his back now and say thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the legendary Meryl Nass.
Good morning, CHD. I'm here today with Peter Kirby, and we are going to talk about geoengineering, what it can do, what it might be able to do, and some of its effects on agriculture as well. Peter, you may remember, as he was in our symposium a year ago, and Peter has written a book. I have the older version right here, which is Chemtrails Exposed, but he has a newer version, a second edition, which is coming out in January, and Skyhorse will be publishing it. So Peter has studied for a number of years the history of the scientific discoveries and what has gone on in order to develop this field of geoengineering. Let's start talking about chemtrails. Peter, are chemtrails real? Are we looking at natural phenomena in the sky, or are we looking at man-made phenomena, and what is the evidence?
Hi, Meryl. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yes, chemtrails are real. They are not an internet hoax, as I first thought. And we have the evidence for this. There's quite a number of ways that one can prove that chemtrails are real. And what we're talking about are these lines in the sky that you see often stretching from horizon to horizon that come out of jet aircraft and just kind of stay there in the sky. And over the course of hours, they'll spread out and turn into an artificial cloud cover. Folks, that's not the way that water vapor behaves. This is what the establishment tells us. Every single applicable government agency has said, oh no, those lines in the sky are just water vapor. Don't worry about it. But we have the scientific evidence that these lines in the sky consist of particulate matter. Now, there's no shortage of studies showing right off the top that breathing in particulate matter is bad for you. Yes, this is why, if someone kicks up a cloud of dust around you, let's say you're walking along a dirt road and a truck drives by and it produces a large cloud of dust. This is why you go like this and like, that's particulate matter. It's not good for you. It's not pleasant to be assaulted with it. And we have the scientific data here. This is generally what I'm talking here is a paper and a video that I did last year called Chemtrails Are Real, the Hard Evidence. It's in my stack on my show, the abstract on Rumble, and then the paper, the video is on Rumble, and then my paper, Chemtrails Are Real, the hard evidence is on my website, peterkirby.com, where all my papers are now. But let's go over this scientific data proving that the lines in the sky consist of particulate matter. First of all, we have my friend Marvin Herndon, who has about 30 peer-reviewed published journal articles that basically say chemtrails are real in a multitude of different ways and show the negative effects of chemtrails upon the earth and the population. And that's his book right there, Chemtrails Are Not Contrails. That's really, really an excellent book. I highly recommend that. It's just packed with all kinds of scientific information. And I do believe he does address what I'm about to talk about, his radiometric data. Marvin J. Herndon, PhD's radiometric data was a published peer-reviewed journal article where he talks about he has something called he was using something called a radiometer. He had it set up on a tripod and it was tracking the sun. It was pointed at the sun. Now, don't ask me what the technical details of a radiometer is, but it measures radiant energy, apparently. And anyway, he was conducting some experiment whereby he was tracking the sun with it. He had it set up so that it would continuously point at the sun. And as he was doing this, a chemtrail happened to waft in front of the radiometer, in between the sun and Marvin's radiometer. He wasn't trying to do this. This just happened all of a sudden. And the data from his radiometer showed that that matter that passed in between the sun and his radiometer consisted of particulate matter, not water vapor. This is hard scientific evidence, peer-reviewed, journal published. And then we have also something that I uncovered a long time ago in around 2010, I think it was. When I first realized that this was going on, I said to myself, well, I'm here in California. The government does absolutely everything. I'm sure that they're monitoring the air and what's in the air. So I found this California Air Resources Board, the infamous, notorious California Air Resources Board, whose basic job is just to enforce the theory of man-made global warming upon the population. But they also were monitoring toxins in the air, or monitoring for toxins. They say on their website that there's not supposed to be any of these toxins in the air. But I went on their website and you can generate charts of ambient statewide averages of both aluminum and barium in the air. And I have the screenshots of it. They immediately took this data down after I publicized it, but you saw increasing levels of both aluminum and barium in the ambient statewide average of the air that we breathe here in California, going up, up, up ever since they started the large-scale domestic spraying in the mid-1990s. And then they went and as soon as I published that, they did some big shell game, and they took the data down and they said, oh no, that's not the data. And then they gave out some other data to, this one environmental group called Environmental Voices. I mean, barely anybody even saw this. They never posted the second data on their website or anything. It was just a big cover up. They had their CIA liaison calling me, trying to feel me out and stuff. But that was hard scientific data, statewide averages, and the only way you get statewide averages is if the air of the entire state is basically showing that level of those toxins in the air, and you don't get that unless the entire state is being blanketed in this stuff, and the only way to do that is from aircraft. So there's that. And then there's also environmental samples that have been sent in from all over the world, most notably rainwater samples, but there have been soil samples and snow samples and other types of samples. This is kind of a crowdsourcing kind of a deal on these. And people will take environmental samples and send them to a lab and have it analyzed for barium or strontium, or barium commonly. You can have it analyzed for any element or all elements, which is very expensive. But if you just have it analyzed for a single element, it's a lot less expensive. But these environmental samples from all over the world, the results of which have been posted on two websites that I endorse, globalskywatch.com, as well as Dane's website, geoengineeringwatch.com. These environmental samples, of course, show anomalously elevated levels of barium, strontium, aluminum, other toxic elements in the environmental samples. And then Dane got two. He went up in a plane and he took direct samples of these emissions coming from planes. And in one batch of direct samples that he took up a NOAA flying laboratory, which is the industry standard as far as taking environmental samples at altitude in a plane. And on one batch, he found, of course, the same elements that we're finding in the environmental samples here on the ground, basically aluminum, barium, strontium, other things. And then on another trip up, he found an anomalously high level of nanoparticles that really shouldn't be there. So he just proved it two different ways in direct samples. So that's 5 different ways that we're looking at hard scientific data that chemtrails are not contrails. These are particulate matter, not water vapor.
So what are the particulates that are in the chemtrails, and where do they come from?
Yes, it has been determined that the substance we are being sprayed with is something called coal fly ash. And this has been Marvin Herndon's thesis, and this is the basis of his, I think it's 28 peer-reviewed journal articles. And it is, and coal fly ash is the smoke from rising that rises from burning coal. It's an industrial waste byproduct of the coal-fired power plant industry. And this stuff has been generated for as long as we've had coal-fired power plants. At a certain point, I believe it was starting in around the 1930s or so, uh, the energy producers running these coal-fired power plants started putting these electrostatic precipitators, also known as scrubbers, on the smokestacks of their factories so that the coal fly ash would be intercepted. They had to do this. They were forced to do this from a lot of class action lawsuits. But then later on, there was something in the 1970s that Meryl and I went over yesterday on our pre-show call. It was called something under the Nixon administration. I forgot what they
Clean Air Act.
Clean Air Act. They ended up the federal government ended up mandating it. I think it was 1976, and where they said, okay, no, you have to have scrubbers on there. But that thing had been evolving for many decades before that finally happened. So in other words, what I'm getting at is that there always has been, or for a long time now, there has been a huge supply of this coal fly ash because they've been sequestering it with these scrubbers, and then it's a toxic waste byproduct, so they have to get rid of it. They have to store it somewhere. So we have just huge mountains of this stuff in, out of the way rural areas in America, and as well as in Europe. They may ship it to other countries and things, but it's a problem. It's stuff that people want to get rid of. So it comes very cheap, and there's lots of it. So this is the kind of stuff that you want if you're going to be spraying it out of planes by the megaton.
And so what properties do you think this waste product for burning coal has that makes it useful? What is the purpose of chemtrails?
Well, kind of getting into more scientific areas, but Marvin and Jenny, my science advisor, Jenny Silcox, who's held a Q clearance with the Department of Energy, on these online symposium that you sponsored, I think was it 1 or 2
A
years?
year ago, 12 months ago.
I was just flying. It was called the Attack on Food and Farmers Symposium. And during that symposium, they had a little conversation where we went first on the second day. It was a 2-day thing if you want to check that out. But they had a little conversation whereby coal fly ash is a substance that when it's exposed to water, such as it will be if you put it out of a plane and it's exposed to the atmospheric water, it becomes bioactive. But not only does it become bioactive, it becomes more electrically conductive. And this is how it fits into what I call the New Manhattan Project. This is the second generation weather modification project, whereby they're not just dumping stuff out of planes like they do in the old weather modification industry, where they're just dumping silver iodide and causing cumulus clouds to rain. What they're doing is they're saturating our atmosphere with this coal fly ash, and then they're hitting it with electromagnetic energy. Now, see, that opens up the doors to basically everything. That opens up the doors to comprehensive weather control, not just hail suppression or making a cloud rain out, which is what the traditional weather modification industry does.
Okay, so let me go back. Starting in the late 1940s, some degree of weather modification was discovered, and cloud seeding began, and other experiments began. And some of this was out in the open. So cloud seeding goes on, routinely in the United States as a way to get rain in parched areas for agricultural purposes, usually. But subsequently, there, of course, and then there's also fog control. So it's well known in the open literature that you can make fog and you can dissipate fog using these techniques, as well as rain. Now, that's where it becomes interesting, because we know that there have been experiments to see whether you can create hail or stop hail, and what you can do with hurricanes, and whether you can move a hurricane, or whether you could make a hurricane stop where it is. And as a lot of us know, there have been very strange movements of hurricanes in the last few years, where they either travel very slowly or seem to stay in one place for a long time, or travel in one direction and then go backwards and travel in the opposite direction, which are things that, if they happened at all, they were pretty rare previously. And and when this happens, they're causing damage. So the question is, a lot of this stuff was open through sometime in the 1970s, and that was 50 years ago. And then in the last 50 years, obviously, we've had a lot of scientists, we have a lot of military scientists, but we don't really know for sure what's been happening. So what can you tell us about what's gone on in weather modification since, say, 1970? And does it relate to the narrative on climate change and the fact that the Earth is heating up and we have to cool it down or we're all going to boil to death? Is there any linkage between these two things?
Absolutely. One of my major findings, and it was the subject of my most popular article ever, was finding that what today's geoengineers who advocate for spraying us with all kinds of toxic substances in order to save us from global warming, believe it or not, the first mention of this theory of the solar radiation management geoengineering, the first mention of it was in 1955 in an article in Fortune magazine. It's under the name of John von Neumann. Some people say John von Neumann. I say John von Neumann, potatoes, potatoes. But it was very interesting to see that this article called "Can We Survive Technology," published in 1955 in Fortune magazine, and I challenged the audience to prove me wrong on this. It contained the first mention of the SRM geoengineering thesis, saying that, well, if we saturate the atmosphere with these particles, then we can deflect sunlight back into space. I mean, basically, they're talking about blotting out the sun, right? What could go wrong? Let's just restrict the amount of sunlight hitting the Earth. And this is a good thing. This is the type of logic that we're dealing with, right? But not only did this article have the first mention of the SRM geoengineering thesis, it also had the first mention in the popular culture of the global warming thesis. I challenge the audience to find an earlier mention of the theory of man-made global warming in the popular culture prior to 1955. I have not found one. I believe that this was the first time ever the theory of man-made global warming had been inserted into the popular culture. It had been in academia for a long time previous to that. It started in 1896 with a guy named Savant Arrhenius. He was a famous Swedish scientist, and I go into that in the book, but people hadn't heard of it. Fortune magazine was one of the top publications in the nation at the time in 1955. That was one of Henry Luce's publications. His top two were Time and
Life.
Well, no, I think it was Time, and then the Time Life thing came in a little later. I've been reading up on Luce. He had Time and then Fortune were his two major ones. I'm not sure where Life came at. They might have been a separate entity at that time, but you might be right, Meryl, but I'd have to look into that. But what I've been seeing is Time. What I've been reading about, as far as I read a biography of him recently, but the Fortune magazine was probably his number two publication. It was a huge publication. It had massive readership, and this one article, "Can We Survive Technology," 1955, provided not only the problem of the theory of man-made global warming, it also provided the solution. Well, we got to spray stuff out of planes to save us from it, don't we? Now, the geoengineers, I'd like to make one last point. The geoengineers today, they always say, whenever asked, what's the first mention of this SRM geoengineering thesis? Like, where did it come from? They always say that it's a 1978 paper from some scientist that Meryl has never heard of called Bedoyko. I had never heard of him. Probably no one's heard of him that's even watching this broadcast. Maybe there's a few people. But they always say 1978 Bedoyko. No, it's not 1978 Bedoyko. They're only off by 23 years. And in the previous year to this mythical 1978 Bedoyko paper, in 1977 was the first mention of the term geoengineering. It was a paper by a guy named Cesar Marchetti, I think was his name. Maybe I'm getting that confused, but the name of the paper was On Geoengineering and the CO2 Problem. That was 1 year prior to what they always say was, the first mention of the SRM geoengineering thesis. This is the level that they're lying to us, the geoengineers. They just constantly lie. And, I've encouraged another professional journalist to just go after the geoengineers. I'm looking at the scientific history of all this and trying to get a chronological narrative going and all this. But I mean, the geoengineers are just like sitting there constantly lying. Dane has a great section in his documentary, The Dimming, where he just has a series of video clips exposing David Keith, the top geoengineer, and he's just saying the most outrageous, just satanically evil things about how we're just going to spray you and just destroy everything and it's a good thing. And it is just absolutely astounding what some of the things that David Keith says, but all the geoengineers are like this.
Well, let me just say that I've been told that measurements in Australia show that as temperature has increased and carbon dioxide levels in the air, in the ambient air, have increased, there's been greater plant growth than there was previously. So you can actually produce more food.
Mhm.
Now, is it possible that if in fact the reason, we don't know what the real reason is why we're being sprayed with this stuff, but if it is to dim the sun, might it be to reduce food production or to affect agriculture in certain ways? It's certainly leaving these particulates of toxic heavy metals in the soil that weren't there before. And so do you have any thoughts on whether there is a deliberate attempt to influence agriculture in a way other than just moving rain around?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have very little time left, right? Like 30 seconds.
We
But
can go a little longer.
okay. Yeah, well, I have some evidence of that. Let's just go right to the beef of it here. There was a patent that was issued to the United States of America as represented by the Secretary of Agriculture. And this speaks to a control mechanism over the food that is produced. This patent, it's patent number 7,582,809. It's called sorghum aluminum tolerance gene, SBMATE. And it speaks to creating genetically modified food that is resistant to aluminum. So, you might think that they might be trying to do us a favor or something. Well, since we're being sprayed with all this bioactive aluminum, and bioactive aluminum is a lot different than the aluminum that just is naturally in the soil. If we're being sprayed with all that, well, then we're just GMO crops, and you can have that food that way. Well, first of all, GMOs are just not good at all. And then also, this is not about helping us out. This is about controlling us. And they, in this patent, they talk about how this method of genetically modifying food can be applied to, I have a big long list of things here, so it was like a comprehensive type of deal. They're talking about applying this method of, there it is, I see it on screen now, this method of genetically modifying food to wheat, barley, rice, maize, cotton, peanut, sunflower, tobacco, rye, alfalfa, tomato, cucumber, soya, sweet potato, grapes, rapeseed, sugar beet, tea, strawberry, rose, chrysanthemum. Some of these things are actually not food, but don't eat chrysanthemum.
Okay, so theoretically, it could be a way to transfer us from ordinary seeds and plants to patented plants. In other words, getting intellectual property and considerable funds to people who own the patents, the companies that own the patents.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's very interesting because we know Bill Gates is very interested in that. Would like all our food to be patented.
And he wants to get population numbers somewhere down to near zero. So, he's a really good guy for that.
Well, so this is what some people claim. We can't prove it. So,
Oh, he said it in a TED Talk.
did he?
Yeah. Oh, you haven't seen that? Oh my gosh, I can't
No, I
believe you haven't
missed
seen
it.
that. Oh yeah, he had an equation up on the screen and he says, yeah, if we do a really good job with things like vaccines, we can get this number close to zero. And he had like a multiplication equation on the screen where it's like this times this equals population. He's like, well, we need to get one of these numbers close to zero so that we can, I'm not lying. I think it's in my book. I'm not sure. I could send you a clip of it. Most people out
Yeah.
there know it. I'm surprised you haven't seen that one.
I've seen the clip of him saying if we do a really good job with vaccines, we can get population
Yeah, that's the one.
lowered by, I think, 15%.
Oh no,
Um,
in that video, he's talking about lowering population. Yeah, that's the equation right there by like 90%.
hmm.
Yeah. Uh,
Well.
I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. But I mean, any type of massive population reduction, you're talking about murdering people. You're talking about causing people not being able to prosper and thrive here on this planet. You're talking about
Yes.
restricting. You're talking about stomping the life out of people. I mean, blotting out the
Right.
is a
Right.
good
On
way
the
to look
one
at it.
hand, these folks say that we have to be egalitarian, everybody needs an equal share of the stuff, the materials on the planet, and everybody, needs to be able to access education, healthcare, etc. And then on the other hand, they're talking about how the planet can't support everybody. So it seems like a contradiction in terms. And certainly some of these folks have speculated that, a virus or war or famine are the most effective ways of reducing population. But um, we found that the COVID vaccine is also a good way to reduce population, reduce fertility,
Yeah.
and that in fact, as a consequence of many things in modern life, we can't really put our finger on all of them. Fertility has dropped. There are more infertile couples. Men are producing 50% less viable sperm than they did 50 years ago, and things like that. And in fact, the spike protein tends to wind up in the ovaries and the testes, in particular.
hmm
Um,
hmm
so those are all issues, but let's end that speculation. Um, so what else do we know about? I mean, it seems to me that the U.S. government always puts its research money, its major research money, into ways that it can conduct war more effectively. And we do know that during the Vietnam War, weather modification was used to pour down rain, give Vietnam quite a big monsoon to try to impede the movement of troops down the trail to South Vietnam. Uh, do we know of what's happened since then?
Well, yeah. I mean, even at the time of the Vietnam War, there was massive investment in looking into using electromagnetic energy to control the weather and cause all sorts of catastrophes. And this was outlined in who I call Gordon J.F. How to Wreck the Environment McDonald's paper. He had a paper that came out in 1968 as part of a book called Unless Peace Comes. But McDonald's paper was called How to Wreck the Environment, and he speaks to using electromagnetic energy to wage geophysical warfare. So, at the time that we were in Vietnam and, they were showing us the Tinker Toy stuff, that actually didn't even come out till like 1974 in the church committee hearings. It was highly classified at the time, these weather modification activities that were going on in Vietnam around the time that McDonald's paper came out, How to Wreck the Environment. But okay, so but at the time that we were doing that in Vietnam, McDonald came out with this paper, How to Wreck the Environment, and that's the real move. They were messing around with the Tinker Toy stuff and
What do you mean Tinker Toy stuff? What are you
spraying
referring to?
spraying silver iodide out of planes is like, that's that's old news. That's, dry ice. The first they started with dry ice and then then, 2 months later, after the big press hubbub dies down in 1947, well, then they're hitting you with silver iodide and lead iodide and all sorts of other things. But that's old news. That's 1947. That came out, the three GE scientists, Langmuir, Vonnegut, and Schaefer. But the real move in all of this, of course, was also going on at the same time right after the war with a series of reports called Toward New Horizons, commonly known as the von Karman reports, where in those reports they talk about using atomic energy to control the weather. Now, okay, so what's his name? Edward Teller, the famous Manhattan Project scientist, founder of Star Wars. Most people have heard of him. He was talking about at the time, well, when we say we're talking about using atomic energy to control the weather, we're talking about exploding bombs, nuclear bombs in the atmosphere to, cause an effect upon the weather. Seems a very ineffective way of controlling the weather, doesn't it? I mean, that was really the cover story. What they're really talking about when they say using atomic energy to control the weather is using electromagnetic energy to control the weather, because that that opens the door to comprehensive weather control. You can't comprehensively control the weather with atomic bombs going off in the atmosphere. But they did speak in this series of reports, top secret reports. They were declassified much later, but these von Karman reports that were actually started as an offshoot of the original Manhattan Project. There's a whole backstory to it. But these reports spoke to comprehensive weather control using atomic energy. The generic term atomic energy can be applied to electromagnetic energy.
Right.
You can apply the term,
Charged particles.
yes, you can apply the term atomic energy to simple electricity, which is
Yes.
subatomic. So they knew what they were doing. They were playing the old semantics game, the old shell game, the old fan dance. And this is what I call government speak. They speak in euphemisms that it's always they're telling you one thing, they're saying look at this, and then down here is actually the real story. And but
So,
anyway, yeah,
yeah, if I can interrupt.
sure.
So basically, what we've said is that the ability to put particles into the air has been around for 100, not 100, sorry, 80 years. The ability and to create rain, and then soon to create fog or dissipate it, and then putting other particles into the air, which may have a charge, and then applying electromagnetic fields to these charged particles to have other weather effects. But the published literature on this is very sparse. So we can't tell you precisely what's happening. We know that there are arrays that we think started with HARP in Alaska, but have now been extended around the world. And then there are other electromagnetic arrays, such as the NexRad system, that can be used to send high levels of energy to a place where particles have been distributed. And once they're up in the air, they can stay there, it's thought, for months at a time before they finally find their way down. So you create a milieu that is readily irradiated with electromagnetic fields, and then things may happen as a result. Do we know what any of those other things are?
Yes, saturating the atmosphere with small particles and then hitting them with electromagnetic energy opens the door for quite a few things. In the book, I mainly concentrate on the weather control aspect. It's the most believable and the most documented aspect of all of this. I generally picked things out of the historical weather modification. I did a really thorough search, and I picked out all these instances of electromagnetic energy being used to control the weather. These things are buried in the historical weather modification literature, but it's the historical weather modification literature is mostly geared towards the dumping of silver iodide, the Tinker Toy stuff. But you do find these nuggets of electromagnetic energy being used to control the weather in experiments and things. But the first thing that comes to mind, I have a chapter in my book called Other Agendas, and this is actually even more speculative. Um, but you apparently want me to go there. There's you can transmit signals better. Electromagnetic energy is propagated better through an atmosphere that is saturated with small particles, and you can transmit. I thought we weren't going to talk about this, Meryl.
Well, we said we would if we were clear that we're speculating.
Okay, we are speculating, but okay, it's very well documented that electromagnetic energy, believe it or not, a lot of people actually know this, or your audience is highly educated, and I've done extensive investigations into this. It is very well documented that you can use electromagnetic energy to influence or control people's moods, thoughts, and bodily functions. In other words, mind control. And so, and HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, the most infamous of the ionospheric heaters up there in Alaska, that's powered by the natural gas that comes from the North Slope of Alaska. They got no shortage of power for that thing. That can produce these types of electromagnetic signals that influence our bodily functions and our brain functions. The guy who wrote the best book about harp, Angels Don't Play This Harp, Nick Begich. I think he's in the federal Senate now, or is it? Or
His son is a member of Congress.
okay,
It's his
but yeah,
house.
they come from a political family up there in Alaska. The Begich family is very well known. I think the guy who wrote the book, Angels Don't Play This Harp, I see it up on the screen. You're conjuring it there. I believe he's been out in and out of public office as well. But
No, the family has. So his brother was a senator and his father was in Congress as well. But Nick, who wrote the book, has just been a researcher and writer and not a member of Congress.
okay, so he wrote the book, Angels Don't Play This Harp. And I think in that book, he said that HAARP can be used for mind control. It can produce these type of electromagnetic signals that
Right.
our moods, thoughts, and
So,
bodily.
so let me just say again, we're
Followed up with
speculating here, but
he followed up with another book called Controlling the Human Mind. Those are the only two books that I know that he's written. And he followed up with one that goes into mind control and electromagnetic mind control specifically. So, I mean, if you want to look into that, I highly recommend Nick Begich's book, Controlling the Human Mind. And there was also one by an author by the name of Delgado called Physical Control, something like that, which is
physical control of the mind. So let me expand on this. I actually know Nick Begich slightly, as we had a mutual friend. So yes, he has written these two books, and he's quite clear about what is known and what's speculation. And like you, he does a very good job historically telling us what is known, so that we can then expand our intuition to try to figure out what else might be there that is not so clear cut. The other fellow, Delgado, was a Spanish scientist, a neuroscientist who implanted electrodes in animals, and he was famous for implanting electrode in a bull and then using a chart, turning the thing on and stopping the bull in its tracks.
Yeah,
so he was and this is back in the 1950s and 50s, 60s, maybe 70s. So Jose Delgado is sort of thought of as a rather unethical
yeah, he's a
researcher.
nefarious guy. I mean, Begich is the good guy. Delgado is the guy working for the CIA.
So I think we're coming to the end. I thank you so much, Peter, for expanding our horizons on this. And hopefully someday we'll have a government that will actually tell us what it is that it's doing. And Peter will be right there following along and chronicling it for us. Let me mention also, so Peter has this book that's coming out in January, a second edition, much updated. And he has also been recently interviewed by Nicole Shanahan. You can see him on her podcast. And he has been interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and that has not come out yet, but should be coming out soon. So Peter is one of the most up-to-date people on what's going on in this field, even though most of it is hidden from us. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Meryl.
Okay, we're live.
Listen.
Yes, we're live. Tell us your name.
Shagra.
And you have 2 children.
I have 2 kids.
And
13.
and how are they health-wise?
They are the picture of good health. Never been on, my youngest has never been on antibiotics. Neither one has ever had an ear infection. My oldest daughter was on antibiotics once. She had an eardrum that ruptured and it was necessary, but we only go to the pediatrician for well visits.
Why do you go for well visits when they're well?
Basically, to check their growth, just to fill out my baby book. And at this point, they got chickenpox actually earlier this year, and we just went about a month ago for their yearly checkup, and the doctor didn't believe me. She said it couldn't have been chickenpox. And I said, well, you know
What was it
this.
like having chickenpox?
It was awful.
Was it awful?
For 1 week.
Because it was itchy or what?
Oh yeah. It was itchy and I had chills.
They don't want to be on camera, viewers. Itchy, chills. Okay, but you're not paralyzed from the neck down like someone who had the chickenpox vaccine was.
Exactly.
So you're good. How are you feeling now?
Awesome.
You feel awesome now? You feel awesome?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you got through it.
And
Good.
my 35-year immunity, natural immunity, held up because I was in their face the whole time.
Okay, and I can tell you, viewers, they're very healthy, beautiful children sitting behind me right now. Right, let's talk about you as a speech therapist.
Yes.
What are you seeing?
I'm seeing I've basically been in the field 20 years professionally and then graduate school. I used to see on my caseload a variety of kids that had different articulation errors, lisping, minor things, sprinkled with some autism, ADHD, and basically all of my schedule is autism, ADHD, more severe disabilities. It's just been on an upward trajectory for the last 2 decades.
That's really sad.
They changed the diagnostic criteria in 2013. The DSM-5 came out, and I remember them saying, okay, now we're doing away with Asperger's, we're doing away with PDD, NOS, all these things that formerly came under the umbrella. And I thought that was strange. And I went home and told my husband, something fishy's going on. I don't know what it is, but then I got to thinking about it, and I thought they have to justify the increase in numbers. So they start changing the diagnostic criteria, and that justifies the increase. Same thing with CDC last year in November of 22, they rolled out new milestones. And they said speech and language milestones are now, it used to be they should have 50 words by 24 months, and now it's 50 words by 30 months. None of my coworkers really batted an eye, and
Dumbing down of society. What advice do you give to the young pregnant mum today?
well, I've been handing out the new book that's kind of written for children. I'm unvaccinated and I'm okay. I've actually given that to 2 women that I knew that were pregnant. The advice I have for them is, if you know anyone with a child with a developmental disability, ask them about their story. Ask them what their life is like, because these kids are in therapy every day of their life practically. OT, PT, speech, ABA behavior therapy. When you're pregnant, if you do, I know so many women that do everything right, they eat organic, and then they take all the vaccines for their kids. And I just want them to be in my pocket for a day, see the families that I work with, many of whom don't even realize that's where their kids' injuries came from.
Right, and teaching people like your children. Do you guys know that, one day when you both have babies, are you going to give them vaccines? No. Oh no! See, that's what we've got to do. Teach the next, break the generational curse.
Absolutely.
Of sickness. You guys ready for Christmas? You look very Christmassy.
Yes, we are.
Very, very Christmassy. Okay. Well, anything else you want to tell the people?
Do your research. I know that's cliche at this point, but do good research. Talk to people who who have someone in their family with a disability, and everyone has to be an investigator, because you can't do a Google search and find what you need to find. Talking to people, talking to families is what kind of started to collect all their stories. At the time when I had my oldest daughter, I didn't know one person that had a child that was unvaccinated.
No.
But I just had all the family stories in my head. So similar. My child was developing normally, and then they just regressed. They don't make eye contact anymore. They don't connect.
Right.
You just start to see patterns. And the other odd thing was, and still is, when I do like patient intakes for a new evaluation, I always ask about family history, and almost never is there any family history. They really try to push the genetic theory. Do you have anyone with developmental disability, speech and language disorder, autism? Nope. Siblings. That's the only family relation. They'll say, oh yeah, his brother has autism. So.
Anything else as a speech therapist that you can warn the people about?
I would say...
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Totally unrelated to a lot of what we're talking about, but I think it's really fascinating, this. There's a new, in my mind, faddy thing where newborn babies are being told that they've got lip tie, tongue tie, lip tie, tongue tie. And I spoke to some midwives, and they were just saying it is a new faddy thing. A lot of money's being made out of the people telling their children, you know, they have to have this done. And do you have a take on that? Because I feel like, well, either there is a problem or we're messing with God's design. What's the deal?
Well, as far as tongue tie, most of that self-corrects. It's a fairly non-invasive procedure. They usually go in and clip them. They discover that pretty early on because they'll have feeding issues, whether breastfed or bottle fed.
But all babies have feeding issues.
Yeah.
So, and this is why I think they're cashing in on it. I think they're going in and telling these young mums.
Yeah.
Because why all of a sudden has 99.9% of the babies being born today got a lip tie and a tongue tie?
Right, yeah.
Whereas in my day, no one ever even heard of that.
No, 100%. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with the shingles, and you probably know in the UK they actually don't mass vaccinate for chickenpox. It's just vulnerable populations, because then all the grown-ups are re-exposed to that virus, and it keeps shingles at bay. So now we have an uptake in shingles.
Oh, yes. Worldwide uptake in shingles, I might add. Well, thank you. I want to just ask your children, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Ooh.
You can be anything like.
A singer.
Okay, so the youngest one is saying a singer. She looks like a singer.
I've been fascinated with the idea of being an engineer.
Engineer, for the old one. Good, good, good. Well, good. We need engineers and we need singers. I like that. Very nice to meet you both. You cannot sign the bus. You're too healthy. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you for what you do. It's invaluable.
What did you think when you saw the signatures? I mean, it's really covering the bus now, right?
It's overwhelming. I feel like there's so many families I work with that I've just, had parents crying in my office, and then I just see all these names and I can 100% relate to it. And it's just so gut-wrenching. It's really sad. It becomes emotionally weary, and I feel like I'm kind of like scooping water out of a leaky boat.
Mm-hmm.
They just, now it's 1 in 36. And I hope that other medical professionals will start to wake up, because it's very strange. Nobody wants to talk about it.
No.
I just want to pull people off to the side and say, hey, you've been doing this for a while, right? Remember, we used to see a sprinkle of kids with autism. Now it's everybody. So it feels like. But nobody wants to talk. And then you're labeled an anti-vaxxer.
True story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
History doesn't wait. This is our moment to rise, unite, and reclaim our children's health.
Join us here in Austin, Texas this November at the Children's Health Defense Conference.
In the wake of unprecedented medical overreach and censorship, the world is waking up, and people like you are leading the way.
We're at a turning point in history. With the pandemic behind us, our fight for freedom and health has reached the global stage.
This is our moment of truth, and we're ready to seize it together.
And Children's Health Defense has been at the forefront of this charge. Our 2025 conference brings together the leaders, visionaries, and warriors who made it happen.
Meet the parents whose lives were forever changed, and hear from doctors who risked everything to speak out. Stand with those who refused to be silenced.
You are going to hear from world-renowned speakers, doctors, and frontline leaders driving the medical freedom movement.
Discover real-world solutions grounded in science, integrity, and human rights.
Join the discussion to talk about vaccines, informed consent, parental rights, and so much more.
And you'll of course hear from your favorite CHD personalities, sharing the latest on CHD's research, litigation, and outreach.
And while you're there, soak up the energy, culture, and music of beautiful Austin, Texas.
Whether you're a parent, a practitioner, or a medical freedom advocate, this is your call to action to protect what matters most.
Be part of the movement that is rewriting the story for generations to come.
So please join us.
Join us.
Join us. Let's make history together in Austin.